The Committee on Homeland Security Subcommittee on Emergency Management and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the subcommittee may recess at any point. The purpose of this hearing today is to examine the various hazards that our nation's first responders face daily and will allow members to better understand the particular dangers posed by lithium-ion batteries. Without objection, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Pfluger, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, are permitted to sit on the dais and ask questions to the witnesses. I recognize myself for an opening statement. I want to begin by thanking our witnesses for testifying before the Emergency Management and Technology Subcommittee. In today's hearing, we will examine the hazards that first responders and fire departments across this country are confronting daily, and more specifically, the threat that lithium-ion batteries pose to fire safety. We look forward to hearing from each of you on this very important and vital topic. Every day, our nation's first responders embody the best of civil service. In fact, with over 70% of our nation's firefighters serving as volunteers, they demonstrate true selflessness, compassion, and courage. Regardless of the danger they may face, firefighters, both career and volunteer, choose to put themselves before anything else when they put their uniforms and their bunker gear on each day. As a former chief of the Island Park Fire Department back on Long Island, I know firsthand that successful emergency management requires collaboration and teamwork with stakeholders at every level of government to prepare for, protect against, and respond to natural or man-made disasters. As members of this subcommittee, we also have a role to play in supporting our nation's first responders. In recent years, new technologies have come with new risks. Fire departments across this country have reported how the increasing use of lithium-ion batteries has diminished fire safety in major United States cities. In fact, injuries caused by lithium-ion battery fires involving e-bikes or e-scooters have increased by 1,000% over the last 5 years, just in New York City alone. In 2023, brave members of the FDNY responded to 268 lithium-ion battery fires, which caused 150 injuries and 18 deaths. To illustrate this increasing trend, there were only 10 deaths associated with lithium-ion battery fires for the combined years of 2021 and 2022. These batteries may be found in daily household items and cell phones, laptops, power tools, and more. However, compared to smaller items with lithium-ion batteries, the power in e-scooters and e-bikes contain around 50 times that of a smartphone. As a result, an explosive and long-lasting fire can occur after overcharging, damage, overheating, poor maintenance, or more of the lithium-ion batteries in an e-bike or scooter. In January of 2023, 17 children were injured and one was hospitalized after an e-bike caused a fire in a building that housed a daycare back in Queens, New York. In November 2023, an e-scooter caught fire in a Brooklyn home, unfortunately killing a grandmother, her son, her grandson, and injuring more than 12 others. With the increased use of e-scooters, e-bikes, electric vehicles, and mopeds, stories like these have become all too common. However, despite the increasing danger, New York City is faced with potential budget cuts and reduced firefighting staff in 20 engine companies to accommodate the growing migrant crisis. And we are all concerned about the future of first responders and fire service throughout this country. Not only is manpower needed to immediately respond to these fires, extinguishing lithium-ion battery fires has proven difficult for fire services across this great nation. For instance, in 2021, after a Tesla caught fire following a crash in a Houston suburb, 8 firefighters spent over 7 hours and 28,000 gallons of water, an amount the department normally uses in a month, before the fire was fully extinguished. The reality is that some lithium-ion battery fires can reignite hours later, some even days later, and traditional fire extinguishing methods do not always work by them. The Biden administration has sought to incentivize more EV purchases through its $7,500 tax credit. However, we need to ensure that we fully understand the dangers or risks associated with high-voltage lithium-ion batteries and the safest way for individuals and our constituents, emergency managers, and first responders to handle any potential fires. We have a duty on this committee to investigate how certain policies addressing the purchase, use, and maintenance of lithium-ion batteries impact emergency responders and fire suppression. Americans should be aware of the risks associated with using electric vehicles, scooters, and mopeds, and everyday devices. They should also ensure that their purchase is from a reputable manufacturer that complies with United States safety standards. Last week, the FDNY shut down an illegal lithium-ion battery operation in Queens and confiscated hundreds of individual lithium-ion cells, 25 e-scooters, and 25 electric or gas mopeds. Federal, state, and local governments must take measures to prevent unsafe manufacturers from endangering the public with cheap lithium-ion batteries. Lastly, as members of Congress, we must ensure that firefighters and first responders have the protective gear, equipment, and training needed to respond to lithium-ion fires and other threats. The U.S. Fire Administration and the National Fire Academy, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, and the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant Program all aim to strengthen and equip fire emergency medical services throughout this country. As a first responder myself and chairman of this subcommittee, I remain committed to supporting FEMA's suite of preparedness grant programs, and I'm hopeful for a successful reauthorization of the fire grants later this year. This is a committee here in the House of Representatives that works in a bipartisan fashion. Emergency management shouldn't be partisan. We are here to keep you safe, to keep us safe, and to keep the United States of America safe. I look forward to hearing from each of our witnesses today on how to address these challenges and improve first responders and fire safety across this great country. I now recognize the ranking member of this subcommittee, Mr. Carter, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my remarks, I want to say that yesterday, while many of us were reflecting on the 6 years since the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School massacre, another mass shooting took place at the Super Bowl parade. My heart goes out to all those impacted by yesterday's shooting. For those of you who first responders were there to respond and protect, we say thank you. To the families that had to endure the atrocities and the terror of having an active shooter, our thoughts and prayers are with them, and for those who were wounded and for the one that we know of at this point that lost their life. We rededicate ourselves to supporting law enforcement to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We rededicate ourselves to providing resources to make sure that people are able to come and gather at celebrations, at places of worship, at schools, at concerts, without fear of someone with a weapon with nefarious actions and thoughts might plague our community. So if we would just all remember those lives that were lost and those people that were challenged. These acts of violence are horrific. Next year, my home district in Louisiana, New Orleans, will be the host of the Super Bowl. We owe it to our communities, our first responders, and our children to do more. We have a serious gun violence problem in our country, and I hope my colleagues will work together to pass common sense reforms. Now turning to our hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. To our first responder witnesses, I want to say thank you, in particular for your ongoing commitment to protecting all of our communities. The threat posed by lithium-ion batteries is growing and is one that we should certainly be monitoring. The fires caused by lithium-ion batteries pose unique challenges, and New York City seems to be ground zero for these types of fires, with over 250 incidents last year alone. Last year, while docked in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a part of my district, a fire broke out on an oil tanker due to the thermal runaway of a cell within a lithium-ion battery in a handheld radio, which caused $3 million in damage. My dear friend, Brian Adams, who is the state fire marshal for the state of Louisiana, brought this to my attention, and we've been working on proposed legislation to deal with this. Brian Adams is a lifelong firefighter, a career firefighter who's demonstrated his love for people, his love for policy, and his love for doing what's right, as you do as a first responder. My colleague, Congressman Richard Torres, has been leading in the legislative work on addressing the threats from lithium-ion batteries in the House of Representatives, and I want to thank him for his leadership on this issue. I hope that the Energy and Commerce Committee will continue its work on Congressman Torres's bill in setting consumer standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act. I fully anticipate today's conversation with the panel to mostly be related to lithium-ion batteries, but I hope that we will also focus on the range of fire threats and oversight of programs that support firefighters. One such fire threat is climate change. Climate change has significantly increased the frequency, intensity, and destructiveness of wildfires. Last week marked 6 months since the fires in Maui, where over 100 people died. While Maui was the deadliest wildfire we have experienced in modern history, in recent years, there have been a string of wildfires that have been deadly and caused mass destruction. 6 of the last 7 years, 2017 to 2023, have had catastrophic fires which resulted in fatalities, loss of infrastructure, resulting in displacement of thousands of families. In Louisiana, last year we had an unprecedented wildfire season. Yes, Louisiana, wildfires. Doesn't usually go together in the same sentence. But yes, we had fires in our marsh, fires going along the interstate system, fires in places we've never had them before. In August alone, we had more than 550 fires that destroyed homes and forced several evacuations. As climate change continues to escalate, urgent actions to mitigate its impact and implement effective wildfire management strategies becomes imperative to safeguard the environment and community at risk. These wildfires are not happening in a vacuum. They're occurring simultaneously as other disasters and adding strain on federal, state, and territorial, tribal, and local emergency managers and first responders. I look forward to speaking to our witnesses today about fire hazards, but also broadly about the need to prepare our communities against all threats. Our subcommittee has jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security Grants Program, which also helps first responders prepare their communities against all threats. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on how these various grants can help fire departments improve community resilience and how we as a committee, as members of Congress, can use our voices and our resources to aid you in doing the job that we greatly appreciate you doing. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Carter. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm very pleased and thankful to have such an important panel of witnesses before us today. I ask you to all please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I would now like to formally introduce our very talented panel of witnesses. Dr. Lori Moore Morrell was appointed by President Biden as the U.S. Fire Administrator on October 25th, 2021, and oversees the United States Fire Administration's mission to strengthen fire services, emergency medical services, and stakeholders as they prepare for, prevent, mitigate, and respond to all hazards. Prior to joining the U.S. Fire Administration, Dr. Moore Morrell has over 3 decades of experience in researching and working in the fire service and in emergency management and response, including founding the International Public Safety Data Institute. Chief Dan Flynn was appointed Chief Fire Marshal of the FDNY Bureau of Fire Investigation in 2021. In this role, Chief Flynn oversees approximately 150 fire marshals who are responsible for investigating the cause and origin of more than 7,000 fires in the city of New York each year, as well as arresting those who commit arson and other crimes in the city of New York. Chief Flynn joined the FDNY in 2005, and prior to that, served as a police officer with the NYPD. Mr. Stephen Kerber is Vice President and Executive Director of the Underwriters Laboratories Fire Safety Research Institute, where he leads a fire safety research team dedicated to addressing the world's unresolved fire safety risks to prevent future fire fatalities, injuries, and loss. Mr. Kerber is also a 13-year veteran of the fire service and served as Deputy Chief at the College Park Fire Department in Prince George's County, Maryland. Chief John Butler serves as International Association of Fire Chiefs President and Board Chair, as well as the Chief of the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. Not only has Chief Butler served in the fire service, but he is also a retired U.S. Marine with 20 years of active and reserve service, including 2 combat tours. Sir, thank you for your service. I thank the witnesses for being here today. And again, thank you all for the work that you do in keeping this country safe. I now recognize Dr. Moore Merrill for 5 minutes to summarize her opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman. Let me turn on the mic and try that again. Good morning. Again, Chair D'Esposito, Ranking Member Carter, thank you both for your well-prepared, well-informed opening statements. And to the members of the subcommittee, my name is Lori Moore Merrill, and I serve as the United States Fire Administrator in the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to discuss the continuous and evolving threats of fire to the nation. The USFA's mission, as you've noted, is to support and strengthen the fire and emergency medical services to prevent, mitigate, prepare for, and respond to all hazards. Since 1974, the USFA has led national efforts to reduce the impacts of fire and disasters on our communities through education, advocating for building codes and standards, conducting data collection, research, and providing subject matter expertise for Fire Act grants, and there is more to do. Millions of Americans witness firsthand how fire continuously poses a substantial risk across the United States. Fire is a public health and public safety problem of great proportion, and firefighting remains one of the nation's most hazardous professions. On average, there are more than 1.2 million structure fires, 3,000 deaths and injuries, scores of injuries and displacements annually from fires. These impacts are further compounded by poor implementation and enforcement of our national building codes and standards and the fire risk associating with evolving technology that makes fires more intense and more destructive. These challenges pose heightened risks to the public and to first responders who safeguard our communities, and the challenge continues to evolve. Lithium-ion batteries, as you've noted, are found everywhere. In common everyday devices, battery-powered everyday items such as cell phones, computers, e-bikes, e-scooters, and of course, electric vehicles. Fire risks from these devices occur when this ordinarily stable electromechanical system is destabilized and the batteries become damaged, used, stored, or charged incorrectly, or when they've had manufacturing defects, all which can cause a phenomenon we know as thermal runaway. Thermal runaway typically occurs when damaged battery cells experience uncontrolled increases in temperature and pressure, often leading to fire. These batteries are changing the fire risk environment for us across America. In a traditional fire, it typically takes about 3 minutes for a room to become engulfed, but now with the increased prevalence of lithium-ion batteries, in fires where these devices are involved, there is often only 15 seconds from the first sign of smoke to thermal runaway and explosion, with windows blown out and fire burning in homes, apartments, and businesses. These rapid changes in fire dynamics lead to shorter escape times and shorter times to structural collapse, often bringing unknown hazards to firefighters. USFA priorities in this regard include determining the risk to the public and firefighter health from lithium-ion battery incidents, conducting consumer education campaigns about those risks, and advocating for necessary research to inform these risks as they evolve. As you noted, the National Fire Academy is also increasing our training curriculum in order to include lithium-ion incident scene safety and suppression tactics in our increasing existing courses. Moving to another threat to firefighters, namely their on-the-job exposure to the products of combustion, diesel exhaust, building materials, asbestos, chemicals, and ultraviolet radiation, and certain PFAS chemicals. PFAS and other toxicants often lead to wide-ranging negative health impacts for firefighters, including cancer, heart disease, as well as sleep and reproductive disorders. To address these exposures, the Protecting Firefighters from Adverse Substances Act, or the PFAS Act, directs FEMA administrator through the USFA to make available curriculum designed to reduce and eliminate these exposures, prevent the release of PFAS in the environment, and educate firefighters and emergency response personnel on PFAS alternatives. Creating a public repository of tools and best practices to reduce, limit, and prevent the release and exposure of PFAS. USFA is actively working on these requirements. Across the board, the USFA is seeking new ways to address these evolving challenges by improving how we conduct, analyze, collect, and report relevant information in a timely manner. Our legacy National Fire Incident Reporting System data are inadequate to do so. So the USFA is working with the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate to develop a new modern cloud-based data capture system that will be known as NERIS, the National Emergency Response Information System, and will ensure that USFA and the fire service at large will ensure that we have the interoperable, secure information to better inform issues discussed today and those that arise in the future. As we consider these challenges ahead, such as those posed by the prevalence of structure fires, wildfires in our communities, the increasing risk of emerging technology, and these forever chemicals, the USFA looks forward to working with our firefighting partners and with the members of this committee to build a fire-safe nation. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk with you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I now recognize Chief Flynn for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Esposito, Ranking Member Carter, and the members of the Subcommittee on Emergency Management and Technology. As Chief Fire Marshal of the New York City Fire Department, I want to express gratitude to the members of the subcommittee for holding today's hearing and to Chairman Esposito for inviting me to discuss the dangers of fires involving lithium-ion batteries and micromobility devices. In 2023, New York City experienced 268 fires caused by these batteries in e-bikes, e-scooters, and other micromobility devices. As a result, 150 people were injured and 18 people were killed. These staggering numbers reflect the crisis that has ballooned over a very short period of time. We've seen the problem most acutely in New York. The city has a thriving delivery culture and thousands of delivery workers and messengers who use e-bikes. Many of the deadliest fires have been caused by e-devices being kept in residential homes and apartments. We have begun to see similar issues coast to coast in communities of all sizes. I speak with my counterparts in fire departments across the country, and many report the emergence of lithium-ion battery fires and ask for guidance on how to grapple with these issues. To grasp the urgency of this problem, it is important to understand that fires caused by lithium-ion batteries are more intense and more dangerous than traditional fires. Upon ignition, unsafe batteries enter a process called thermal runaway. They undergo a series of explosions, releasing highly toxic gases and projecting flaming cells that can travel great distances, increasing the likelihood that the fire will spread. These fires instantly create severely dangerous conditions, rendering escape for anyone nearby significantly challenging. This is especially true if fires occur at night when an occupant is sleeping. Additionally, lithium-ion battery fires require large volumes of water to suppress and can reignite spontaneously, making them extremely difficult for firefighters to extinguish. They also pose uniquely grave dangers for the first responders who respond to these fires and risk their lives every day to protect life and property. One example of the detrimental results of these fires occurred last November, killing 3 generations of one family in one fire. 81-year-old Albertha West, her son, 58-year-old Michael West, and her grandson, 33-year-old Jamil West, perished in that deadly fire because an e-bike containing an uncertified lithium-ion battery erupted in flames. Unfortunately, these fires continued to plague our city and our nation. In my nearly 20-year career with the fire department, I would be hard-pressed to identify another instance in which a new cause of fires originated, and in only a few years became one of the leading causes of fatal fires. The FDNY has adjusted quickly, creating new operational procedures for responding, ensuring that devices are fully under control and disposing of uncertified batteries and hazardous materials. We created task forces of inspectors who proactively inspect bike shops, respond to complaints, and frequently visit locations most likely to experience problems. We amended department policies, enabling administrative companies to respond immediately to reports of hazardous conditions. We also created robust informational campaigns to educate members of the public about best practices for avoiding problems with their devices. Most importantly, we have extensively engaged with our local, state, and federal legislators seeking support for new laws to help curb the effect of these devices. At the federal level, New York City respectfully asks Congress to pass H.R. 1797, the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act, which would require the Consumer Product Safety Commission to issue a mandatory national standard for these devices. This legislation has bipartisan support and unanimously passed the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which is fitting as these deadly fires do not discriminate. We see them in large cities and small rural areas, in red and blue states alike. Americans need the protection of Congress, and we hope that this bill is called to an early vote on the House floor. As we look forward, the experience of lithium-ion batteries serves as a critical reminder of the importance of having public safety entities and first responders at the table when policy is made. Electrification technology is exciting, and there is no shortage of innovators striving to find better solutions. However, it is essential that we implement new technology in concert with an appropriate focus on public safety. I thank you for your attention to this issue. I'm appreciative of the work that you are doing to pass this important legislation, and I know that I share the sentiment with the brave members of the FDNY and grateful firefighters and emergency responders across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I now recognize Mr. Kerber for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman D'Esposito, Ranking Member Carter, and other members of the subcommittee. Since January 1st, over 375 Americans have died in home fires, including 50 children, mostly under the age of 5. Americans should feel the safest in their homes, but that's simply not the case. FSRI research shows that we have the least amount of time ever to escape as fires spread faster, due in part to the synthetic furnishings and finishes around us. We have seen a 25% rise in fire deaths in this country since 2012, a disturbing trend that's going to be a challenge to reverse. The fuels we bring inside our homes are increasingly complex. Though innovative, lithium-ion batteries, for example, as you've heard, can overheat, catch fire, emit toxic smoke, and create explosive environments. From the first sign of a problem, there could be less than a minute to escape a battery fire. We must act now to address these escalating fire dangers. Lithium-ion batteries are increasing and have resulted in injuries, fatalities, and property loss. If damaged or misused, a lithium-ion battery can transition from smoking to explosive fire growth within a matter of seconds. Even when not the initial cause of the fire, lithium-ion battery involvement can increase the intensity and magnitude of any incident. Over 1,000 documented incidents have occurred in the US since 2021. The real number is likely underreported because lithium-ion batteries are not well captured by the current National Fire Incident Reporting System. FSRI is investigating multiple facets of lithium-ion battery fires to close knowledge gaps around topics like home energy storage systems, e-mobility fire hazards, and electric vehicle fires. Further study will help us understand the fire dynamics, characterize risks, and advance emergency response protocols around lithium-ion batteries. But technology is outpacing us, and we can't do it alone. The government must collaborate with fire service stakeholders to direct research towards top safety priorities and provide increased funding to improve battery safety. As the use of lithium-ion batteries grows, emergency calls will expose first responders to explosive events and toxic emissions beyond traditional experience. Supporting the safety of fire service personnel requires governmental and non-governmental partners to discover effective solutions and funding for research to equip departments with advanced tactics for battery incidents, protective equipment designed to shield against lithium-ion battery exposure risks, critical equipment otherwise unavailable due to budgetary constraints. And an immediate way that we can support these asks is the reauthorization of programs like the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program and the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, or SAFER program. We also need to reauthorize the U.S. Fire Administration, and that's incredibly important for us to handle this topic and move forward. Additionally, laws and regulations should integrate current codes and standards. To remain effective, current codes and standards must not be cherry-picked outside of the voluntary consensus process, and they need to incorporate the latest fire safety research. This research shows us that fire sprinklers are effective in protecting lives with the changes we see in the fire environment, including lithium-ion batteries. The government must work with fire service stakeholders to educate the public on lithium-ion battery fire safety practices and empower consumer regulators on product safety, including setting mandatory standards for lithium-ion batteries and e-mobility devices and closing outdated loopholes that enable uncertified devices to infiltrate our communities. Passing H.R. 1797, the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act, is a very important next step. As innovations transform our world, public safety must become a top priority. We must acknowledge the need for research on risks, resources for first responders, public awareness, codes and standards, and governance so lithium-ion batteries can fulfill their purpose responsibly. By acting now on these priorities, we can address critical issues and create a safer world, even as it grows more complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kerber. I now recognize Chief Butler for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Esposito and rank. Let me start over. Good morning, Chairman Esposito and Ranking Member Carter. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss lithium-ion batteries and other threats to fire safety. The most important sentence I can summarize with is, America's fire service is approximately 5 years behind the curve in this problem. We request federal assistance to catch up. Lithium-ion batteries can provide an alternate source of energy to Americans. However, they present fire safety challenges. We do not, when not used or disposed of properly, a fire involving a lithium-ion battery requires a longer response time. In addition, the fire department must package the damaged device and prepare it for transportation. The response and mitigation of these incidents requires new training for fire departments. Also, it can create a burden on fire department staffing and resources, as you mentioned earlier with 7 hours on a fire. We're not just challenged in the EV and mobility space with completed products. Local fire departments also must respond to incidents in warehouses, manufacturing, and recycling facilities, as we've seen. We also must respond to incidents involving the transportation of lithium-ion batteries by road, rail, and waterways. The battery is not the lone concern. The charging components use of third-party replacement lithium-ion batteries and large home energy storage systems also poses challenges. Unfortunately, the increase of these batteries in our society has not led to increased response to capabilities of the fire service or rapid adoption of current fire and building codes. We need more help. I would like to thank my partners at FDNY for their leadership in this effort. In addition, I note that this problem is not isolated to one region. It is affecting communities nationwide, small communities, smaller departments other than FDNY and Fairfax County. For example, in Fairfax County, we had 17 incidents involving lithium-ion batteries in 2023. They were in a variety of devices, including vehicles, mobile phones, portable chargers, and laptop computers. As the nation deals with an increase in lithium-ion battery fires, we need to be able to track and better understand their occurrences. Currently, the National Fire Service utilizes the National Fire Incident Reporting System to track fire-related incidents. However, this system is antiquated and must be replaced by the National Emergency Response Information System. We ask Congress to pass H.R. 4090, the Fire Grants and Safety Act. It would authorize $95 million for the U.S. Fire Administration through FY 2028. This increase in funding will allow the USFA to replace NFIRS with the new NARIS that I spoke of, and will allow real-time data collection about incidents involving lithium-ion batteries nationwide. H.R. 4090 also will allow increased funding for the U.S. Fire Administration and the National Fire Academy to train firefighters to respond to fires caused by lithium-ion batteries and how to safely manage and clean up the incident scene afterwards. Also, the USFA will be able to fund public education programs to promote the safe use of and disposal of lithium-ion batteries. We also urge Congress to pass H.R. 1797, the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act. This legislation would require the Consumer Product Safety Commission to issue safety standards on lithium-ion batteries in micromobility devices. In addition, we ask for support for efforts to educate states, tribes, territories, and local communities about the importance of adopting model codes and standards. Thank you for the opportunity to address the challenge of lithium-ion batteries and other fire safety issues. Congress can play a role in ensuring the nation's preparedness by passing legislation like Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act. In addition, it can pass the Fire Grants and Safety Act. This legislation will allow the USFA to track lithium-ion batteries, develop firefighter training, and conduct public education programs. Finally, we ask that Congress create a grant program to help local communities and fire departments prepare for incidents involving lithium-ion batteries. Finally, we ask Congress to create a grant program to help local communities and fire departments prepare for incidents involving lithium-ion batteries. The International Association of Fire Chiefs looks forward to working with the committee to ensure the safe adoption of this revolutionary technology. Thank you for giving me some time.
Thank you, Chief Butler. Members will now be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Chief Flynn, thank you again for being here today. Just last week, the FDNY shut down an illegal lithium-ion battery business in Queens that was building battery packs for individual battery cells and replacing old lithium-ion batteries, which is in violation of the fire code. Can you explain to us and to people listening at home how you are inspecting and tracking which companies are making those unsafe batteries?
Thank you for that question. We have a robust inspection program within the city. We team up with our fire prevention inspectors on a daily basis and go out and inspect every location that we become aware of that is selling, servicing, leasing, renting of these devices. We believe we've inspected every single one within the city that we are aware of. We've conducted over 500 of these inspections just last year. Many of these businesses we've actually inspected several times. So when we do become aware of them, we get out there and inspect them immediately. We've urged the public within New York City to call 311, which is our non-emergency number for concerns from the public. And we pledge that we will get out there to inspect and address their concerns within 12 hours. We've also utilized our field units, our firefighting units, to help in those inspections. We want to make sure that every location in the city is safe from these devices. One thing that limits our ability, though, is we can really only inspect these commercial locations. We cannot get inside people's homes to inspect for the safety of the lithium-ion batteries inside their homes. So in that respect, we've moved to an informational campaign where we've had a robust informational campaign on social media, getting out to public events, meeting with religious leaders, working with our housing authority to get that word out about lithium-ion battery safety. We want to make sure people are storing them properly. We don't want them by people's front doors or their primary means of egress of their apartment. So we just want people to be safe, charge them properly, store them properly. When they're damaged, dispose of them properly.
And now, you mentioned that you guys are confident that you've inspected every single location, obviously specific to the commercial, because as you said, it's sometimes difficult to get into the residential. And while you're investigating these locations, have you found or identified any specific trends to the lithium battery fires? For instance, perhaps batteries that are manufactured in China or ones that are repurposed. What are the patterns that you're seeing as to the cause of these deadly fires?
We are tracking that. We are trying to track the brands of the devices that are failing most often in the city. Unfortunately, when we do conduct our investigations, many of these products are damaged beyond recognition, and a lot of that goes into interviews with the owners of these devices. And we do share that data. We have a very strong relationship with the CPSC already, and we speak to them on a daily basis. Every time we do have one of these fires and we collect evidence from that fire, we allow them the opportunity to inspect that device, to record what products are failing on a national level, so they have that information. Our data collection, I think we're doing a great job of that right now, but it's pretty early on to make that determination as to where these products are coming from and what specific devices are failing.
Thank you. Mr. Kerber, we have heard reports from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission of unsafe lithium-ion batteries being sold on sites like Amazon by Chinese manufacturers. How are industry and government partners working together to establish safety standards, and what more can we do to assist in that process?
So our fellow organization, UL Standards and Engagement, has worked diligently over many years to create voluntary consensus standards that cover many of these lithium-ion battery-powered products. So the standards are there, but they are voluntary. So by moving forward with the act that's currently in play right now, would force CPSC to make a mandatory requirement in order to make sure that these devices are in fact meeting these standards and being certified as such.
Thank you. My time's just about up. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Butler, your testimony mentions challenges with collecting accurate data from lithium-ion fires, and you note that such data are not currently maintained in the national database. You also mentioned that we're 5 years behind. How are fire departments tracking these lithium-ion battery fires, and are there plans to develop a means to track them nationally? Can you give an example of the types of national data that would give a better picture of where and why these incidents occur?
Thank you for the question. There are over 30,000 fire departments in the United States, and some have resources that others don't. In the community I'm in, we're able to track fires related to lithium-ion at the company level and input into our local database. We have the abilities to do that. Many other places don't. Many other places don't have those resources, and therefore even more the reason for a national information system such as NARIS. We can't address an issue until we understand the issue, and we're continuing to learn about lithium-ion challenges, and we need to see it from a national or international level, and that's where NARIS would come into play. I'm fortunate to be in an organization that we can do a lot and feed NARIS. Many places need to start from the ground up. I think that's the end of my response to that question.
Yeah, thank you very much. U.S. Fire Administrator Merrill, how does the U.S. Fire Administration plan on tracking lithium-ion batteries statistically nationally? The statistics nationally, rather.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. At present, we are limited to media scrapes. This is how we're learning. I mentioned in my testimony our antiquated INFIRS system does not have the capability for tracking. And so local fire departments, much like Chief Butler just referenced, are tracking them either as a hazardous material incident or an electrical fire. And so there's no consistency because the data system can't contain it. So the new cloud-based platform that's being constructed now will be onboarding several departments for testing within the next couple of weeks. We will onboard an additional 50 departments in the summer, and then opening up for the nationwide fire departments to self-onboard to the new system. The new system will absolutely be able to not only track lithium-ion, but other emerging technologies as they arise, so that we can better understand any fire risk associated as these emerging technologies that are going to make our lives better, but they also may carry fire risks that we don't understand. And so we will track them in the new system. They'll be able to be tracked straight from the scene. We'll be able to upload videos or photos right from the scene as well, so we'll understand better about the products into the new system. So understanding data input for firefighters across the nation is going to change once we have the new system operational this year.
So we know that many of the everyday products that we use, from cell phones to my kids' hoverboards to all of the various things that are out there, have lithium-ion batteries. Where are the majority of these batteries manufactured?
Sir, I'm afraid that's something I'd have to get back to you on. Perhaps
Does
my
any
colleague
panelist have an answer or no?
UL may have an answer.
No, it's okay if you don't. You can get back with me. The other question associated with that is, we know that we get on the airplane every day with lithium-ion batteries. The risk of explosion, or if, God forbid, a terrorist use of some nefarious act. Are we tracking these kind of things to make sure that we're ahead of the game in dealing with this being used in a more nefarious act versus an accidental one?
You know, that's a great question, sir, and is something that is extremely concerning, as you have noted there. This part of the tracking would be able to identify, would that be a behavior that might evolve? Certainly, as we learn from every single incident, we're still in research mode here, very much in research mode. And incident by incident, unfortunately, is how we're learning. There is some research funding around this that my colleagues from UL and other institutes are looking at lithium-ion, how the runaway happens, how these explosions happen, how the cells evolve. But also, we are learning post-incident. Every event that FDNY responds to, we learn something. And so as they evolve, we're trying to track that information, compile it so we have information to carry forward.
Great, I've got about 17 seconds left, so I want to ask one other question that's very important to me. While we're focusing on lithium-ion batteries, I don't want us to lose focus on fire threats. In August, we saw brutal fires destroy parts of Maui, which tragically led to 100 confirmed deaths. As we prepare the nation's future threats, such as climate change, it's imperative that we prioritize community investments to improve preparedness measures against all forms of hazards. U.S. Fire Administrator, can you share with us that ensuring that climate change is being factored into all fire preparedness across the nation?
Absolutely, sir. Climate change is in the forefront of our mind. What is happening across, as you pointed out earlier in your opening statement, wildfires in Louisiana. This is a first. We're seeing the changes, everything from the atmospheric rivers in California to wildfires in places that have not historically experienced them. One of the things that we note is that we continue as a nation to build toward risk. In other words, we are clearing fire-prone lands that have burned for hundreds of years, perpetuating the vegetation, and yet today we're clearing them and putting structures there, people there, often with one way in and one way out. And so as we build toward that risk, we must take a stand on building codes and look to the science that we know can make a difference. Fire-resistant building materials, all of those things must be upheld, and that's how we'll reduce the risks.
Thank you. My time has far expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I now recognize from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Moore Morrell, in your testimony, you mentioned the next generation PFAS-free personal protective equipment, along with science and risk-based mitigation programs, can lessen the health risk for first responders. My bill, HR 3254, the First Responder Assesses to Innovative Technologies Act, would expedite the process for getting this next generation equipment into the hands of first responders and firefighters, ensuring they have the equipment they need to do the job safely and effectively. I want to thank the International Fire Chiefs Association for endorsing the bill. What is FEMA doing to change its process to get equipment and systems onto the authorized equipment list and into the hands of first responders?
That's a great question, sir. As you know, PPE, or the gear, turnout gear, is a priority 1 level for the Fire Act grants, and so it already remains there. One of the issues with having PFAS-free gear is that we need the manufacturers to actually produce it. Often the manufacturers don't produce until there's a demand, and the demand has not arisen yet because most fire departments are held to purchase based on an industry standard. And so the NFPA standard that directs and is over the gear itself still has a test that the test requires PFAS in the gear in order to pass the vulnerability test for the gear. So we're working to change the standard so that we can have the departments who have to comply with the standard be able to purchase in order to drive the demand for the manufacturers to make the gear. So right now, we're in a bit of a circular issue. It is not a grant. Grants will cover the gear that can be purchased. One of the things that we do want to put on your radar going forward is how are we going to not only purchase gear for the nation, but how do we dispose of the gear that has PFAS in it that exists now for every firefighter in the nation?
So basically, we have a chicken or the egg situation.
We do currently, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Chief Flynn, while we are discussing safety, training, and equipment for first responders and firefighters, I wanted to quickly discuss one of FDNY's training facilities. As you are aware, there was a shipboard fire at Port Newark in my district last July. Sadly, 2 brave firefighters with the Newark Fire Division lost their lives. Augusto Akabu and Wayne Brooks succumbed to the fire on a smoke-filled deck full of vehicles. The FDNY has a ship simulator on Randall's Island that I understand is utilized throughout the year. Could you tell me more about the facility, including how many firefighters and first responders can be trained at this facility annually, and whether the number of firefighters trained annually can be increased and the costs associated with training?
Certainly, thank you for that question. My condolences to the community and the loss of those brave firefighters in that shipboard fire. We do have a shipboard simulator at Randall's Island. We have many different simulations there. We even have a fuselage of a plane. So we train on all potential threats at our fire academy. We also train our probationary firefighters there. We train about 400, close to 400 in a class. So it's a very, very busy facility, but certainly we can try to address any cross-training. I know our chiefs from Special Operations were in very close contact with the fire chiefs out in Newark at the time, and I know we are still in discussions with them to share how we train and the way that we train, and I would be certain that we would be open to hosting others to show them our training methods and our facilities to try to benefit the fire service as a whole.
So right now, only FDNY is utilizing your facility?
We train a lot of our firefighters there. We have close to over 10,000 firefighters, so it is very busy, that location. But I know we do train with other agencies from time to time, and I can bring that back to the commissioner and try to reach out and get some more training for others.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Okay, the gentleman's time's expired. Now recognized from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for convening this hearing. I thank you for the witnesses for being here as a member from New York City. This is obviously of great importance to me. Chief Flynn, I had the pleasure of meeting with you and Commissioner Kavanaugh a few weeks ago to discuss this issue, which I think you even noted in your opening testimony has risen in such dramatic fashion, where 150 people were injured last year, 18 were killed, 268 fires caused by lithium batteries, which is over 1,000% increase from just 2019. I wanted to discuss a little bit a concern that I have in terms of the pathway towards some of these problems, which my district in last June faced 4 people died. I was a little surprised, and I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm a little surprised that none of the witnesses know where these lithium-ion batteries are manufactured, because if we don't know where they are manufactured, how are the new mandatory regulations that the Consumer Safety Protection Bureau would be required to issue if my colleague to the left of me, Congressman Torres's bill, is passed?
So if I may, sir, we do have an answer to that. The U.S. does get most of its lithium-ion batteries from China, South Korea, and Japan, but there's a huge unregulated market within the U.S. that poses the challenge to regulators, for sure.
Right, and that's where I wanted to go next, because something struck me in the meeting that we had, Chief Flynn, which is that a lot of the danger of these lithium-ion batteries comes from those who purchase them messing with them or rejiggering them, mostly to allow them to go faster, which provides a whole nother set of problems that we deal with in New York City, but it also increases the danger. Is that right?
Absolutely. By opening these up, it creates a tremendous danger. There's really no regulation for people to repair them. So they're engaged in extremely dangerous practices. We've had several fatalities related to the repair or reconditioning of these devices throughout the city. The incident that you mentioned on Madison Street a few months ago, we believe that they were working on batteries at that location as well, which killed 4 people tragically in Manhattan. It's important to note in that incident as well, there was no fire that extended to the apartments of the people that were killed there. The smoke from these devices is so toxic that if it reaches your apartment, you're immediately overcome by this toxic gas.
Right, and it's important to note that that fire started at an e-bike store, so it wasn't just a charge situation. So this raises the next question, which is, there's no question I'm a co-sponsor of Congressman Torres's bill, and it's essential that we get that passed. I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will push their speaker to put it on the floor so that we can get it passed. But I am worried that this black market that we're talking about, the unregulated market, is not going to be affected by this bill. And so, I guess Chief Flynn or perhaps Chief Butler, because you guys are on the ground, what do we need to do or be thinking about to address this black unregulated market of turning up these batteries so they go faster, which causes more risk?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we do have an excellent inspection process within the city. So anytime we're alerted to any of these shops or makeshift commercial locations, which we've seen them pop up within housing communities.
Do you think you have enough authority and resources to be able to tackle this issue?
We could always use more resources, of course. Our inspectors are stretched very thin when it comes to inspecting locations that are engaged in these practices. But the reconditioning of batteries currently within New York City is currently not legal. So when we do observe these shops conducting that in those practices, we do close them down or issue violations to them.
Well, I think you raise a very important point, which is that yes, we can regulate, but enforcement has to be a priority. I know it is for the fire department, and I know that you are working with a task force of other city agencies, but there needs to be enforcement not only of the regulations and law as it relates to these batteries, but there needs to be enforcement of our traffic laws to prevent people from using these e-bikes going 25 miles per hour or more, often wrong way on one-way roads, which causes a tremendous public safety risk. And so I thank you for being here. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentleman's time's expired. I now recognize my good friend from Texas and the chairman of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence, Mr. Pfluger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you letting me wave on here and thank the witnesses for being here. I'll pick up where my colleague from New York left off, and that is where are these batteries being made? Who is making them? Mr. Chairman, I've got a document here that I'd like to insert for the record that talks about Beijing's power play safeguarding U.S. national security in the electric vehicle and battery industries.
Without objection.
This document talks about the contemporary Amperex Technology Company, or otherwise known as CATL, C-A-T-L, and the potential, because of their outsized influence on making lithium-ion batteries, to have nefarious actions inside the United States, including dependencies on them and also including the potential use for battery storage to be able to insert malware and connect to charging stations. And so that's really where I'd like to go right now, is talking about EVs and the fire hazard. Recently in my district, there was a traffic accident that shut down a pretty major highway system for about 12 hours. And so I'll start with Chief Flynn. Talk to me about the risk of fires in EVs and how that impacts your organization and the impacts to other motorists and communities.
Thank you, sir. We investigate approximately 7,000 fires a year. 2,000 of those fires within the city are car fires. So we inspect every single car fire that occurs within New York City, and we have really not seen fires in EVs up until this point. We're aware of incidents across the world with EV fires, and we train to extinguish those fires, which is extremely difficult, of course. So we are aware of the issues in other areas, but specific to New York City, the fires we're really seeing that are killing our citizens in New York City are fires related to the batteries that are powering the micromobility devices.
Chief Butler?
When a fire engine is dispatched to an EV fire on a roadway or elsewhere, potentially we could require a whole lot of water, a lot of high volume of water to suppress any stranded energy in the batteries or the electric vehicle. And also a protracted amount of time on the scene. So the converse of that is a community that doesn't have a fire engine or its crew in that community in its primary role and responsibility. So there is a community ripple effect with regard to EV fires. We still don't know what we don't know, and requiring a lot of water, a lot of resources for a protracted amount of time.
Why does it take so long to put out fire with a lithium-ion, it's hard to say, battery?
Dr. Kerber and others could probably get more in the weeds with regard to the science, but it's that. It's a reaction that creates heat and fire and flames, and that reaction is almost perpetual at times. So that stranded energy feeds upon itself. I'm probably not saying it well, but he could say it better.
No, Chief Butler, you're starting out very well. So it's a lot of energy in a very small space. And all of those cells, if one goes into thermal runaway, it then heats all the cells that are touching it, and imagine hundreds, if not thousands, of these cells together. When we put them in an EV, we highly protect them. So we typically put them in a container and bury it as low and into the middle of the car as possible and encase it so that we don't have other problems. That's what makes it so difficult to get water to in order to cool it off. And then as lithium-ion batteries go into thermal runaway, they also produce oxygen, which allows them to burn in this closed compartment and release these toxic gases. The fire department can't get to that.
Okay.
And we don't want them tearing it apart either because of the high voltage concerns.
Definitely some things we need to think about. I'd like to give a shout out to my home district, to Goodfellow Air Force Base, for their the progress that they're making on these. They're the DOD's only joint fire training center. They train hundreds of fire professionals each year and are doing a great job. The last question I'll ask, and for any of you, is the nexus between terrorism and nefarious actors in lithium-ion batteries. Anybody in the last 20 seconds, Dr. Moore, Merrill, or Dr. Gerber?
Is the potential there? The answer is yes. If the understanding happens and the mechanism to be able to put these batteries into thermal runaway and then leave a device in a public place, then can it explode? Of course it can. And so is the potential there if that becomes known? Yes.
I thank the witnesses for your time. Chairman, thanks for letting me wave on. Yield back.
Mr. Pfluger, thank you for joining us. I now recognize my friend from New York, Mr. Torres. Thanks for joining us.
I want to thank Chair D'Esposito and Ranking Member Carter for allowing me to wave on. Poorly manufactured and poorly handled lithium-ion batteries are ticking time bombs in American homes and businesses. A lithium-ion battery can cause not just a fire, but an instantaneous explosion. The sheer speed and scale of the destruction it brings is nothing short of staggering. For proof, look no further than the ruins of 2096 Grand Concourse, a neighborhood supermarket in the Bronx, one of the few, reduced to rubble at the hands of a 5-alarm fire caused by a lithium-ion battery. Lithium-ion battery fires are happening in America and happening with greater frequency and intensity. The growth of these fires in New York City has been exponential, from more than 30 in 2019 to more than 40 in 2020 to more than 100 in 2021 to more than 200 in 2022. In the span of 4 years, there's been a 900% surge in lithium-ion batteries, creating an unprecedented crisis in fire safety. And so, Chief Flynn, I know the City Council has enacted legislation, but if we in Congress do nothing or do too little, is it fair to say that the crisis will simply keep getting worse?
Thank you, sir. I remember meeting you out there at the Grand Concourse after that fire. It was a terrible tragedy. Luckily, nobody died from injuries at that fire. That was one device that took out an entire shopping center. It was a huge fire, a 5th alarm. For just to put it in perspective, that's the maximum that we have, right? That's the most resources we can bring to a scene. We have regulated it within New York City, and we've seen many violations of that law that we put in place locally. We cannot regulate devices that are coming into the city from the surrounding areas. So
ultimately, there's no substitute for federal legislation.
Yeah, so we really need that legislation enacted to stop those products from coming in, not only to our city, but to cities around the country.
So here in the House, I'm advancing legislation, H.R. 1797, that empowers the Consumer Product Safety Commission to establish safety standards for the manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries and the e-mobility devices that contain them. And I want to thank the International Association of Fire Chiefs, which was the first to endorse the bill. Although no legislation is a magic bullet, do you believe, as I do, that safer manufacturing would prevent and reduce lithium-ion batteries in New York City and elsewhere in America? Chief Flynn, do you want to?
Absolutely. I think, as Dr. Kerber mentioned, we're really not seeing these fires in the EVs. The reason, I believe, is because they're manufactured better. We're seeing low-quality products that are causing these fires in New York City. Products that are being worked on or fixed or made to go faster in New York City. These are not high-quality products that are causing these fires. If we were to enact that standard, I believe we'll see what we see in the EVs, where we're seeing very few fires in EVs, at least in New York City, I could speak for. If we had that standard, I think we would see a tremendous change.
You spoke about the lack of quality. I sit on the China Committee, and part of the problem is the lack of safety regulation in China. Just like the flow of drug precursors from China is perpetuating opioid deaths in America, the flow of poorly manufactured lithium-ion batteries from China is perpetuating fire deaths in America. I feel strongly that Congress should act swiftly to lower the de minimis threshold for imports in order to prevent poorly manufactured lithium-ion batteries from saturating the American market. Does anyone have an opinion on the de minimis threshold?
I would say that it's, as high as it is, has certainly allowed a number of e-bikes and e-scooters to come into this country underneath that threshold and create fire safety problems that we're dealing with today.
Administrator, about 2 years ago, I passed the United States Fire Administration Empowerment Act, which set up a federal process for investigating the deadliest fires in America. Can you speak about just the status of the implementation of the law and the importance of the federal role in fire safety, which historically has been seen as a local concern?
Absolutely, sir. And first of all, thank you for your interest in fire safety and in that bill, sponsoring that bill, because we are in the midst of rulemaking at present, defining what a major fire would be, as was defined in or laid out in the legislation. And so we're hopeful to very soon be able to exercise that authority and look at major fires and these recurring unfortunate fires that are happening with the lithium-ion.
I yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Torres. We are going to now start a second round of questioning. Before that, without objection, I'd like to enter into the record a letter that was received this morning addressed to myself and Ranking Member Carter from DoorDash, expressing thanks about the hearing and their commitment, but specifically about this hearing and calling attention to the fire hazards posed by the proliferation of substandard imported lithium-ion batteries powering micro-mobility devices. Dr. Moore-Merrill, as lithium-ion battery fires have clearly increased, they've become more dangerous and, of course, more deadly. Are firefighting organizations asking for more assistance through our Assistance to Firefighters grant and staffing for adequate fire and emergency response programs to prepare for these type of fires?
Yes, the fire departments across the nation are eager for training. And so, as I said to you, we're still in a very much research and understanding stage. Every incident provides additional information. Our colleagues in research, even sitting here at the table, Dr. Kerber and his team have been researching. They provide training online. We have enhanced courses at the NFA, as has been noted, in training in tactics and understanding scene safety. But each time that the manufacturers, particularly with the new micromobility products and even the EVs, they evolve, they change. So the training has to keep up. So every time we learn something, it's like we have to change the training. And so all of these things are causing departments across the nation to need constant training in this regard. So yes, they are asking for that, and it is primarily understanding and training. We're still trying to understand the impact on our gear. We've talked about PFAS, but right now we're beginning to understand that firefighters who are fighting these lithium-ion fires, and you heard about the toxins from the smoke, well, we're seeing also that once we wash their gear, some of the toxins from these fires are not coming out of the gear. And so we're still looking for research to be able to understand that impact. So we anticipate that that's going to be another issue around the gear and the safety of firefighters themselves.
So one of the goals of this committee since the beginning of the 118th Congress was to make sure that resources, especially when it came to grant funding, was made not only available, but that the application process was made known to even the smaller departments. You know, coming from the NYPD, the FDNY, you know, we are the big departments that are always recognized with grant funding. But it has been our goal, and that's a bipartisan concern that we have, to make sure that departments, even in the smallest crevices of this country, know that they have the ability and the resources available. So I know that I speak for both sides of the aisle that anything that we can do to relay those messages to help get that awareness out is important to us. Mr. Kerber, your testimony stated that lithium-ion batteries present a dynamic challenge to the fire and emergency services. As use of these devices accelerates through communities, emergency responses will expose first responders to explosive thermal events and toxic emissions beyond traditional protocols. Following the attacks on September 11th, 2001, many first responders who were present that day were exposed to ash, debris, and various harmful particles that have resulted in countless, not only sickness, but unfortunate deaths. It is of the utmost importance that we ensure the safety of first responders so that they can continue to do their jobs and keep our communities safe. What type of research is FSRI conducting on the negative health effects of lithium-ion battery fires, and what can Congress do to help?
Thank you very much for that question. As we speak right now, the FSRI team is conducting a series of EV fires at our laboratory in Northbrook, Illinois. They spent the last 3 weeks burning different manufacturers' EVs, understanding the size of the fire, but more importantly, working with NIOSH and other industrial hygiene experts to understand what are the chemicals that are coming off of these vehicles, at what concentrations, and what possible health effects could there be with this new challenge. So that data has been gathered over the last several weeks. It will now be in laboratories being analyzed so we can understand what is in that smoke. And then from there, we'll work with some toxicology partners to figure out what could the possible health effects of this be. And then from there, we start developing methodologies and practices with the fire service so they understand how to protect themselves, what equipment they need, and all of the downstream impacts that we need to prevent.
Thank you. My time's just about expired. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Moore-Merrill, I'm going to come back to you because it looks like you've got somebody shared with some information on where we think the larger amount of these batteries are manufactured, as I asked earlier. Since we now have an idea that we don't know where they all come from, but we have a pretty good idea that a lot of them come from China. And the concern with when we import components like this, share with me the mechanism or process that they're tested before they're put into equipment, toys, cell phones, bicycles, motorcycles, cell phones, hoverboards. Are they inspected? And if so, to what extent?
So one of the things that you heard Dr. Kerber and Chief Flynn talk about was the voluntary standards that they are tested to today. So UL has a standard. There are standards that the testing, and they are labeled. The unfortunate part is that often those labels are being fraudulently applied. And so we have some fake, and I know FDNY has certainly encountered some of that. So there are voluntary standards. What we need is a mandatory standard.
So certainly we know that a nefarious actor is not going to voluntarily tell that they're doing something nefarious. We all know that.
Correct, sir.
So what can we do? What are we doing to stop that or to have a more robust checkpoint?
At this point, what I'd like to do is turn to Dr. Kerber to talk about the UL standard and that testing and
Certainly.
what UL is doing to engage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore-Merrill. So for over 130 years, UL's been creating safety standards and certifying to those safety standards. I think one of the big pieces that people don't realize about that process is through our colleagues at UL Solutions. If you have a product that bears the UL mark, that product is inspected in where it's being created to make sure that it's being made to pass the safety standard, and there's a follow-up service to make sure that it continues to meet the standard as it is sold all over the world. So in order to bear that UL mark, not only did it pass the safety standard that was created via the voluntary consensus process, but it continues to be made to that standard. And I think that is not what's happening here. There are good organizations, good companies that are following this process for e-bikes and e-scooters today. There's many certified products that have met that safety standard as it exists. Because it's voluntary, there's many that also have not.
We only need one.
Correct.
We only need one bad one to cause someone to lose their life. We only need one bad one to wreak havoc on our nation's security. We only need one bad one to wreck the whole system. So share with me this notion of voluntary. What does that even mean, and what is that process? With no disrespect, it seems that we are trusting people that may not be trustworthy to tell us a product is good, and trust but verify is probably a good notion to employ.
Trust but verify is absolutely appropriate. I mean, so it takes the entire system to make it work. So you have to have the retailers that only want to sell certified products. You have to have consumers that only want to buy certified products by a nationally recognized testing lab, so they know that what they're buying at the store has in fact gone through this rigorous process and is safe to have in their home. So it takes many actors in order to make that system work.
So is there a distinction between those that were voluntarily checked and those that have gone through a more exhaustive check?
So anyone that bears the UL mark has gone through an exhaustive certification process. The voluntary component is also the consensus process by which the standards are made, where all stakeholders are brought in, everyone is able to bring their science, bring their knowledge to the system to make sure that those standards are covering all possible and foreseeable safety hazards that might exist. So if you've gone through that process, then you're producing a safe product.
So by what percentage would you say are products that are being used today in America that have not been UL tested, but are on the products on the shelves in the homes of American people right now at risk? Would you guess? Percentage?
I'd have to look into that. I know that
Can somebody just, I mean, are we talking 10%, 20%, 30%, 1%?
Americans have hundreds of products in their home that bear UL marks.
Okay, but I need to know, because now you've distinguished for me that we have some that are really tested and some that are voluntarily tested. I think the American people, someone here, if you can't get it today, I would really like someone to report back to us some notion and some idea of what percentage of components that we've deemed to be dangerous may be on the shelves and in the homes of American people that have not been tested. Can anybody just real quickly, my time is up, but if you can't get it, will you all commit to getting it for us?
We will do so, sir.
Now, I'd like that not two people ask again and somehow you mysteriously find it like you did when I asked about China. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My time is far expended. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to pick up a little bit on where I left off, Dr. Kerber, and ask you for your perspective on the kind of secondary downstream concerns that these e-bikes especially create. And we are hopeful, of course, of passing Congressman Torres's law, which would make the voluntary testing mandatory, which is a critical, vital first step. I think we're all in agreement about that. But again, I want to go back to this question of what to do if those are properly tested, but then are purchased and then either played with or changed or altered after that. What are your thoughts as to how we can regulate that, how we can enforce that against that?
Modifying lithium-ion battery products is incredibly dangerous. We need to be able to make sure that those are sealed systems and are not able to be tampered with. But humans are involved, right? So we know and have seen that they have been tampered with. There was actually a fire death in Virginia where someone had tampered with a device that they had purchased on the internet and lost their life in that fire. Enforcement's incredibly difficult. I mean, the fire service is incredibly understaffed when it comes to things like enforcement. It's usually one of the first things to get cut within a community. So we need to bolster those resources because it's not just a lithium-ion battery problem, it's a fire safety problem, period. Enforcement is one of our biggest challenges.
And do you think that the mandatory regulations that would arise out of the passage of this bill could be done in a way to make it, to require certification of lithium-ion batteries that are more difficult to tamper with than right now?
Absolutely. I mean, you can write any requirements into the standard and it goes through the consensus process, everyone agrees with it. Absolutely, there's ways to reduce the chance of that happening.
That's all right. That's helpful to understand that on the front end that there is a way of reducing the possibility of tampering. Chief Flynn, you had mentioned in our meeting that the Fire Department of New York is part of a task force to address this issue. Can you explain a little bit more what that task force is and how you are working with other agencies to address this issue?
Absolutely. We are working with many city agencies. We go out and inspect together because a lot of these locations are engaged in other dangerous practices that we need to address. So we employ the help of our Department of Consumer and Worker Protection to address certain issues, such as our local law 39, which requires devices sold, rented, leased within the city to meet that UL certification. So we have that in place already within the city. It went into effect in September of 2022. So we've been out vigorously enforcing that law. So we work with all agencies within the city. We go out, as you mentioned, NYPD is entrusted with securing the roadways related to these devices. We employ their help as well, so we do joint inspections with them.
And you inspect, when you say joint inspections, you're inspecting the stores that are selling these batteries?
Yes, we are not capable of doing street-level enforcement, and that law applies to the sale of the devices, not the possession of the devices. So street enforcement, mainly geared toward violations of the vehicle and traffic law, would be conducted by the NYPD. Right. We do go out with them to these locations, though, to inspect the devices that are being sold, and when they are found to not meet the requirements of the VTL, the NYPD then would take action there.
And through this task force and your work with the other city agencies, have you come up with any other ideas for how to enforce not only the certification process in local law 37 that you referred to, but also on the back end to make sure that they are compliant with the certification process?
We issue many summonses, violations. We seize devices at the time of the inspection. We re-inspect after those summonses are adjudicated at court. We go back and make sure that does not continue. Anytime that a new store pops up, we make sure we get out there as soon as we become aware of it to inspect that location. Again, we cannot inspect people's personal residences, so we have seen most of our fires in those.
My time is up, and I would just like to say, in addition to, or in reference to the letter from DoorDash that you entered into the record, I do think there is a place for the delivery companies to have a role in making sure that deliveristas who are working for them and using these e-bikes are compliant with the regulations and certifications, and that we ought to, in this committee and perhaps otherwise, investigate how we can engage with some of these delivery companies to help ensure that these e-bikes are safe. And I yield back.
Sounds like a good idea for another subcommittee hearing. Without objection, I'd like to enter one more article into the record. It's from the New York Daily News, dated December 10th, 2023, titled "Family Mourns Bronx Man Killed in Latest Fire Blamed on Lithium-Ion Battery." I want to thank the witnesses, Chief Butler, Mr. Kerber, Chief Flynn, Dr. Moore-Merrill. I want to thank you for your time, for making the trip here, for your valuable testimony, and of course, I want to thank my colleagues for their questions. The members of this subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask that the witnesses respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.